Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. In the shadow of COVID-19, the effects of compulsory telework on white-collar employees. My name is Mahmut Bayazıt from Sabancı Business School. Very glad to be here talking to all of you about my research. Let me introduce myself a little bit. My field is organizational behavior and human resource management. I study different topics. I've been at Sabancı Business School since 2017. You can see my email today, and if you have any questions and if you want to communicate with me later, please feel free to do so. Prior to Sabancı, I was at Koç University, again in Istanbul, for about 5 years. I have a PhD from Cornell University in organizational behavior and human resource management, and MSc from Baruch College, City University of New York, in industrial and organizational psychology. I wear many hats. Today, I will talk about my research and hopefully give you some tips on work-family issues. I also act as a consultant to firms in HR issues, and I do volunteer. As I said, I have many interests in terms of research and teaching. I teach leadership, negotiation, and I also do research in employee well-being, and this is what I'm going to talk about today mostly. Work-family issues have critically important for employees' well-being. So what does this term mean, work-family? The term refers to experiences that result from the intersection, the interface or interactions of work and family phenomena. It's a very old field, started from the 1950s. The concern is that, of course, there is this work-first model, the hyper-capitalist model. Ideal workers, according to this model, must demonstrate 24/7 devotion to their jobs, answer emails in the middle of the night, or get up early and do work in family time. So the requirement for the ideal worker is to separate work from home. This image of professional ideal worker has to hide all the messiness of home life from the workplace. This, of course, raises gender issues. The ideal worker aligns with the ideal of masculinity. And, of course, those men, as well as women, who cannot align themselves with this ideal worker image sometimes are evaluated more negatively or ridiculed for their low performance. So my first question to you today, we're going to have a number of polls. My first poll question from the system is, does your organization subscribe to this model, this work-first model? I wonder if your current organization subscribes to this model. If the organization subscribes to this work-first model, you may feel some pressure to show how tough you are at work, to stay late and work after hours without overtime pay, or to hide what you're living through at home as a mother or a father, and to hide your concerns balancing work and family life. The work-first model demands that you take your work to home and ideally demonstrate professionalism by separating the boundaries between work and home. All right, let's see.
Sharing the results.
Let's share the results.
The 30% said yes, definitely answered the question. 45% perhaps a bit, and 25% no, not at all. So it's a balanced situation.
Okay. The majority seems to think there is some truth to this model in their organization, at least some truth. But many organizations, it seems like, are waking up to the problem this model creates for their employees, especially for women, but also for men. The issue, of course, work-life balance issue and work-family issues, relate to the issue of work hours. You can see from this slide. The slide shows the percentage of workers working over 50 hours a week. On the right-hand side, you can see Turkey with 45–50% of workers working more than 50 hours a week, followed by Mexico, Israel, Chile, Austria, New Zealand, Brazil, and Great Britain. So, these are very problematic work hours. If, in these countries, usually the law suggests a 40-hour week is the normal. But you can see a lot of people working much more than 40 hours. So the second poll question that I have is that how many hours do you work in an average week, including paid and unpaid overtime work? The second poll question is up. You can compare from the results from your answer if you work more or you are one of these 50-hour people in your country. In Russia, for example, almost nobody works 50 hours a week. Similarly, in the Netherlands, Sweden, very few are 50-hour workers. Okay, over 100 responses. I think we can.
Ending the poll now and sharing results.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have the just 3% on 35 hours or less, 12% on 36 to 40 hours, 22% on 41 to 45 hours, and 34% on 46 to 50 hours. And this is the most abusive, most chosen site, along with the 30% on 50 hours or more choices. So we can say that two-thirds of the attendees are working over 46 hours, we can say.
Wow. Okay, so a very high number. I'm guessing there's a lot of Turkish people in the audience, but we can relate to these work hours to the struggle people have fulfilling family responsibilities. And this is 2016 data. As you can see from here, some countries work around 30 hours, 35 hours a week. Other countries work 35 hours a week. Countries working countries working 40 hours a week, and there's Turkey over here. And it shows a positive correlation as the work hours increase, struggling to fulfill family responsibilities increase. So it seems like for many of us, this balancing work and life business is very, very difficult, given the number of hours we put into our work, and given the fact that the demands of our work increasing day by day. With the gadgets that we have, smart gadgets, we take our home, our laptops and so on, we seem to increasingly put work first as demanded by our organizations. So I'll skip the next poll. I was going to ask if you think you're able to achieve work-life balance, but let me first show you these results. There are some countries, this seems like a country level phenomena, national phenomena, installing certain policies that all organizations need to abide by, and therefore, like work hour policies or laws, and therefore a lot of people are able to balance their work and life. Whereas other countries, some in South America, some in Asia, some in Europe, in America included, you can see that there are people in these countries score very bad in terms of their work-life balance. In fact, worse than other countries, including Northern Europe and Germanic Europe. All right, so let me suggest then that the cultural conception of these two domains that are separate is wrong for many of us. The reality before the pandemic was these two domains are intersecting, interacting, and many other times interacting in a negative fashion. But nowadays, during the pandemic, with quarantine orders, a lot of people staying at home and spending a lot of time for work next to their family members, these two domains are interacting a lot more. And this is causing what we call increasing levels of spillover. Stress experienced in one domain of life results in stress in the other domain for the same individual. This is an intra-individual concept. It's a process by which attitudes and behavior in one role affects attitudes and behaviors in the other role. A similar concept is called work-family conflict, which I have studied for a while. Work-family conflict is a type of inter-role conflict, and it can happen from work to family, meaning work may interfere with family, and family demands may interfere and cause stress at home or at work. So this can happen time-based or strain-based fashion. As we showed earlier, that work time, the time that we spend at work, directly affects our responsibilities, how we struggle with our responsibilities at home. And similar things may happen if we spend a lot of time with family responsibilities, then this might interfere with our work. We can also, others suggested, one can also suggest these two domains can interact in a positive fashion. Work-family enrichment, they called it, or facilitation or positive spillover, suggests that, behaviors and skills gained in one domain can help with the other domain. You can think of, definitely you're getting a training for work, a soft skill training, let's say, and that helps your interactions at home. That can happen, or you know, your work demands may give you better autonomy, and you might help your family members with their problems using that autonomy. So a lot of people studied, of course, individual differences in how people try to balance their work and life. So the next question I want to ask you is whether or not you're an integrator or a segmenter. What does these mean? Let me kind of define you. If you're a segmenter, you draw a hard line between your career and your non-work roles, and you don't want to mix them up. When you're on the clock, you're focused on your job, and so that you don't have to think about sending any late-night emails once you're done for the day. You can try to protect your work boundary from interference from your home life, or you can try to do the opposite, protect your home from interference from your work life. You can try to do both. If you're an integrator, you probably like having the freedom to blend your work life and non-work life and move back and forth between the two as needed. You know, there is very low need for you, if that's the case, to protect home or work boundaries. Or you can be a mixed type. You can say, you know, I sometimes act as if I'm a segmenter, but usually I'm an integrator. As I showed you in the previous slides, you can be a mixed type, or a mixed type with tendency to integrate, or you can be a full integrator versus a full segmenter. So the next poll asks you, which do you think you are? Let's see how many audience members today believe they're segmenters or integrators or a mixed type. That's
we have shared the poll, and now we are ending it. It has been on share.
right. So wow.
So 15% is as segmenter, 49% is mixed, and 36% is actually being the integrator. That are the poll results.
That's interesting. A lot of us started becoming integrators more and more as the demands of the work asks us to take our work to home, or you know, some organizations started allowing to take family issues and solve them with home resources. That's interesting. But still many people are mixed. There is some research on this. The research, one piece of research suggests, piece of research by Smith and colleagues in 2006, published in Human Relations. They studied over 600 employees and over 4,000 plus episodes. And they found that trying to keep work and home life separate could actually be making you deplete your cognitive resources and lower your job performance. So if the workplace is not helping you with segmentation, trying to segment your home and work life is a difficult task, and it becomes depleting for you, and your focus, your concentration on your work decreases, unfortunately. There's another piece of research done by Google. They have done this research on 4,000 employees, a survey, and 30% identified as segmenters, much more than what we identified in this poll. And the rest was integrators. Most people were occupied, just like in this poll, the middle ground, the mixed category. But the results show segmenters, at least on Google, were significantly happier about their work life and their well-being than integrators. And almost half of the integrators want to be a better segmenter. They act like integrators, they enact integration, but they end up seeing that it's not working for them in terms of their happiness. So especially if the organization provides resources, policies to help people segment their work and family lives, segmenters are happy. And if there's no help, segmenters are unhappy and probably they're not as successful in their jobs, at least in the short term. So what kind of support can organizations provide? You know, some of these supports are called flexible work arrangements. You know, flexible work arrangements refer to not only when an employee works, such as flex time, but also where and how long an employee works. Although these flexible work arrangements are available for many in many organizations, it seems like a lot of organizations provide them based on the manager's prerogative. So you have to get permission from your manager to use one of these flexible work arrangements. They are different from other family supportive policies that your organization may provide, such as child and elder care assistance or maternity and paternity leaves. But you know, they're very, very influential in terms of assisting employees in balancing their work and family life. So the next poll asks you, let's see how many of your organizations, how many of yours you work in an organization that provides one or more of these flexible work arrangements. So this is our last poll. So we can see that a lot of you work in organizations, almost half of you work in organizations that uses flex time. 30% use flex place. Of course, this question asks you before the pandemic. After the pandemic, many of us are working at home, and we will talk about that. And 12% says part-time work. 14% says compressed work week. Okay, so this is not very surprising, I would say. Flex time has been found as a very, very successful way to decrease work-family conflict or negative spillover for employees. I've done a piece of research on this, but just to show you what was happening prior to the pandemic, just like you, about 30% was working at home, part-time or full-time, and close to half used flex time, and more felt that they can be flexible in their timing if there is a need. In my research, I looked at perceived availability of flexible work arrangements. Does your organization provide any of these, just like I asked you? And I found out that these arrangements lead to what we call flexibility ideals or idiosyncratic deals between a manager and his or her employees. And these flexibility ideals, of course, provide flexibility for the employee and helps them resolve work-family conflict issues. It is directly related to lowering work-to-family conflict, and it interacts with family supportive culture and influences family to work conflict. Let me show you what I mean by interacting with family supportive culture. Of course, availability of flexible work arrangements does not mean that the organization automatically becomes family supportive in its culture. And if it's not family supportive, using these flexible work arrangements, you get a backlash from it, meaning the manager is not happy and he or she lets you know that they're not happy. And your family to work conflict increases. The fact that you're becoming flexible does not mean that family does not interfere with the work. In fact, you can go home, you can work from home, but people are going to notice that and people are not going to like that perhaps. So family supportiveness of the culture that you're in your organizational culture is very, very important in terms of whether or not using such flexible work arrangements are going to be helpful for you, especially in terms of family interfering with the work. So let me stop here and ask if there's any questions. Maybe we can get a couple of questions if that's being asked, or I can continue.
I think it's not a question, but it's a comment, but we can be converted into a question.
Sure.
Do you think, does it change when you are owning the company or when you are owning a startup? What we are talking about mostly about organizations and organizational companies. And what happens when you are doing a startup? So your life and your work becomes mixed. And what will be your comments about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I haven't collected data from startups, but I've read about entrepreneurial companies and their culture. Of course, the culture is, such cultures are full of integrators, meaning people do not care about segmenting their work and private lives. In fact, the work model in general requires intense demands on your time because you have to get up running and become profitable at a very short amount of time. It may take a year or two, but in those year or two, you're not going to have a good work-life balance, unfortunately. So having such demands on from your work life, you need to worry about whether or not your family is going to be there once after the company is up and running. They have demands, they have needs, and part of the reason they're with you is, of course, they think you're the one supposed to be fulfilling those needs and demands. And it's very, very clear that entrepreneurs have, just like any of us, have 24 hours and have to break down those 24 hours. Being very disciplined in your approach on how you spend your time becomes extremely important if you own your own firm. Don't spend time on frivolous issues, and your breaks will be decreasing. Your ability to restore your energy level and deal with family issues or work issues will depend on your personal energy, how fit you are as a person. So you got to get a good night's sleep, but on top of that, you need to be able to exercise. Otherwise, you won't have the necessary energy to focus. And your eating, drinking habits must be able to support that kind of lifestyle, demanding lifestyle, I would say. So very, very important that you're a good time manager. Extremely important. Other questions?
There are other questions, as we can see, and they are most related with about the employees. And one of them is about, have there been instances where the employees thrived during lockdowns and quarantine? I'm thinking about positive psychology, and maybe that some employees are resilient and maybe able to overcome the stressors and have a better balance, work-life balance, etc. At your studies, do you find any relations between the resilience of the employees and their performance during lockdown or?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of us have high resilience, but part of the resilience comes from our self-control, whether or not we use plans, goals in our life, whether or not we can manage ourselves. As in the previous example I gave with respect to entrepreneurs, self-management is important for everyone. And in our research, in fact, in the research that I'm going to talk right now, we find that people higher in self-control, goal-oriented, planners are better able to deal with the interference between the domains, the negative interference between the domains. They actually chart out their time better. They plan how they're going to work, where they're going to work at home, and find out ways to block interferences both in their minds and with their families. So they're much more open about how they want to approach work at home. So I would say definitely, self-control is a big issue. It can be developed, but some people have more of it. And it can definitely be developed through practice, hard-earned practice.
And there's another question, I will collect two questions into one. These are, what do you think about using Kanban or Scrum in teamwork? And second one is, how do you think about the form of introducing the virtual office tools and going to work in the virtual space? Maybe we can connect these two questions, like what can be the tools that you can advise to use to achieve this work balance, work-life balance? And what do you think about the future of the workplace in virtual offices or virtual reality?
Great questions. I would say in terms of Kanban or Agile Works, Agile Teams, was that the question? Agile Teams, right?
Yes, it was a question.
Yeah. Okay. I would say, they are how teams should operate. They are how actual teams should operate. Actual teams are a small number of people mutually accountable to achieve a common mission. So they're a great way to operate for a team. But, it has to be, the mission has to be clear. The team members should need diverse skills, bring together diverse skills to solve problems on the way. And they need to trust each other for that methodology to work. So it's not just about the methodology, but it's also about the design of the team, who is in the team, and if they're team players, if they have teamwork values to start with. In terms of the future of the work, I would say that at least this research results suggest many people demand some level of okay, David is telling me, all right. Can you go up? Okay. Some level of work from home, be it a day or two every week, And this is going to be the future of work, I believe, for many, many organizations. Some organizations will go to the extreme and will choose not to have office space for everyone. There will be offices for people to come together from now and then for meetings that needs to happen face to face. Maybe a team is meeting the first time or first couple of times, but then virtual meetings will become a reality as technology improves, and technology is improving rapidly, I would say. So let me say a couple of things about this research that we have done in how people are trying to manage the boundary between work and family during the pandemic. This is research that I've done with 3 colleagues, İlknur Özalp Türetken, Ferhat Ayıldız, and Ecevit Kosova from Istanbul University. So we aim to look at how do employees experience the work-home boundary when they have to work from home due to COVID-19 pandemic. We collected weekly data starting the 2nd week of May for 8 weeks. Every Sunday they were asked questions about these issues. The first, at least 421 people filled at least one survey, and 91 people participated across 8 weeks. Just to show you contrast with your segmentation and integration preferences, we have seen that very few people are integrators when they're working at home. They want to segment their life as much as possible, most of them, and both protect home from work and protect work from home. Most people, as I said, seems to believe that after the pandemic, they should keep working from home at least a few days. Those people without children are more likely to prefer at home more frequently or as frequently as possible. And women also prefer to work from home, even if they have children. It seems like, women with children under the age of 6 is having the worst problem while working from home. Their self-time, the time that they spend for themselves to recuperate, to recharge, is down to 70-something hours a week, which is pretty much all about, eating, showering, and basically sleeping. Their home time is about 55 weeks. They need to take care of their baby, their children, which is very difficult. And men seems to not have the same problem, even if they have a small child. They spend over 80 hours for themselves. Transitioning from home to work, is happening a lot more, meaning that employees, while they're, having a conversation or spending time with their family, all of a sudden needs to deal with work issues. This might happen in the evening, at night, or on the weekends. Less people transition from work to home. Women with children younger than 6, again, transition a lot more than everyone in both directions. And women with children younger than 6, of course, have higher levels of conflict in both directions. But men with children younger than 6 also have some family to work conflict to deal with while working from pandemic at home in the pandemic. But when we ask about their career priorities and housework responsibilities, it seems like men do not do a lot of housework, even if they say their partner their partner's career has priority. And women say they work all the time, even if their career has priority. About 35% of them do the housework themselves. Other than gender, autonomy is a big issue. Having low autonomy in your job, makes it very difficult for you to use the ability to work from home to your favor. So work to family conflict is high. The demands of work, still gets to you while you're working from home. And then, some people seems to work from home 6-7 days a week. These may be probably integrators. They actually do not use any tactics to save themselves, to protect their home from work interference, and therefore keep on working more than 50 hours a week. If you look at what happens over the 8 weeks, we see that segmenters, people who believe that they want to segment, prefer to segment their work and home life, they use a lot of tactics to save their home compared to mixed or integrators, suggesting that segmenters are constantly worrying about how they're going to protect their home, which may not help them in terms of well-being, because their worry will get to them in terms of psychological and physical strain. If you look at longitudinally again, if you're a senior manager in the audience, you have to be worrying about the fact that other people, frontline personnel or first and mid-level managers, do not feel, do feel more psychological strain than you. In fact, in the beginning of the pandemic, or when the quarantine is up, they were feeling more physical strain compared to you. So don't think that what you're feeling is exactly what other people are feeling. And it seems like organizational support matters. High levels of support from the organization helps people deal with the psychological strain as well as the physical strain. In fact, when there's low organizational support or moderate support, people's physical strain levels are high even after the 8th week. And manager support is also important. Even a moderate level of support from the manager helps relieve the pain of psychological strain and physical strain. So these are my conclusions. I will leave some time, a couple of more minutes maybe, to answer questions at the end. Thank you very much for listening, by the way.
We are at the last minute, and there's an interesting question from Ahmet Rahim, and he asked about how would you measure productivity when working from home? I'm in engineering and found that working from home does not work for me. Is it similar to other fields? And what do you think about this situation? What can be KPIs?
Yes, definitely. The KPIs becomes more difficult. Many of the KPIs that you use at work may not work similarly. And some jobs are definitely not geared towards or hospitable to working from home. But I would say, it's also a matter of preference. If you're a segmenter, you may have a much more difficult time in becoming productive and trying to understand how you can get productive at work. One thing that you can do is, if this is available to you, you can definitely separate an office space in your home to leave out the interference from home life, and measure the time. Set yourself goals. Of course, set yourself a goal of working, let's say, 3 hours uninterrupted in the morning between 9 to 12, and give a break at 12, let's say, and measure every week how many days are you able to achieve those goals, to see how productive you are in terms of using your time. And I would also suggest, asking your colleagues and your supervisor, if you have a supervisor, of course you would, about your ability to help the team, contribute to the team. Seeking feedback in these times is very, very important. It is not about managing your impressions, but understanding what kind of an impression you provide to others around you when you're working from home. Asking about that is very valuable. I would say, straightforward, going to your manager and asking, what was your impression? What was his or her impression of you while you have been working from home the last few months? It would be very, very valuable. And, lead a discussion on what you need to do better, how you can become more productive and contribute to your team better. These conversations need to happen more frequently than we believe. We have the impression that, people are just going to adapt very easily. Not so likely. Some people are not aware of how they're supposed to adapt, and some organizations are not very hospitable in terms of these adaptation problems. So you have to be forthcoming in terms of your concerns, and you have to try new things every week to help yourself adapt to this new situation. In fact, it's not new, but it's going to change, hopefully for the better, in the next few months, because people are understanding that they're going to have to work from home more and more in the future. And the workplace, the concept of the workplace needs to change.
Thanks, and we have ended our normal time.
Yeah. I would like to thank everyone. I was hoping that maybe we could have a few more questions, but it's fine. I thank everyone for listening and contributing for the questions, and wish everyone the best in their struggle to work from home productively and happily. Best.